Much of the most significant work that I was concerned with, I think, all the time I was at NPL, was the next project, which was Scrapbook. And we wanted to build another fact retrieval system, if you know, maybe that's not quite the right term, but storage and information storage and retrieval system, which would be user-friendly. It would run on a machine that was at NPL so that we could develop the software readily and use it once it was done. And there were various elements that we wanted to build in. One was what would now be called word processing, managing the text. Second was email, sending messages to, we didn't call it email, but sending messages to other users. We'd call it sending messages to people, I think, really. It was very primitive, that element of Scrapbook, in that each user had a message file, and if you indicated you wanted to send this person, naming him, a message, the system would put it in his message file, and the next time he looked at it, there it would be. It certainly was email. You could broadcast messages, you know, to several users, but it was in a very primitive form. And the principle of Scrapbook was, another feature I should mention, was hypertext, as it's now called, where you can link readily from one, look, if you've got one piece of information on your screen, it can have embedded links to other pieces of information, and if you I'm clicking on it as if there was a mouse, because there wasn't a mouse in those days. It was a keyboard response. The text on the screen, the sort of document you're starting with, would have to give the user, either explicitly or not, a set of choices, one of which he could type. So the obvious thing is yes, no queries, but to say yes, he would have to type probably just Y for yes or N for no, but other longer sort of responses were perfectly possible. One illustration that we had, purely as a device for showing the hypertext, was a story, a children's story, I guess, I never really thought, called The Black Dragon, which was published. And it was printed hypertext. It was a paperback, and there was a bit of story on the page, and then it said, are you going to go into this house, or are you going to walk away because it looks a bit dodgy? If you go into the house, turn to page something. If you want to walk away down the street, turn to page something else. So that the book had a complex structure with loops and iterations and goodness knows what, branching structure. And with the author's permission, we incorporated that as an illustration of the sort of thing that hypertext could do. And in fact, that story had several different endings, you know, depending on, it was a sort of detective type story. A lot of the things that are taken for granted now. And it was particularly useful for project work where you've got several people collaborating. And, you know, if Peter and I are collaborating on a project, then I want to see this bit that he's done so that I can do my bit that uses it, and that sort of thing. It's very useful for individuals, but it's even more useful, I think, for groups working together. The computer that we used was a Computer Technology Modular 1 computer, long forgotten, I guess, by most people at any rate. But it serves the purpose very well. And eventually we had two separate Scrapbook systems on the NPL network, and the hyperlinks worked across them, so that you didn't know, if you were using Scrapbook 1 and the link led to Scrapbook 2, you would get the result from Scrapbook 2 without realizing that you were now talking to a different computer, which again is commonplace today, but must have been probably unique at the time, I would guess.